not that significant. I mean, so these are a few points that I can make off the top of my head, but I think we'd have to look at the merger ratio, etc., a little more closely at this point in time. Okay, I'm being told that we have Anshula Kant joining us right now on the phone line. Ma'am, thank you very much for joining us. What can you tell us? What more can you tell us about this merger?
Actually, I was not listening into your program, so I don't know what you mentioned. You can ask me specific things if you would like to.
Okay, all right. So could you could you tell us a little bit about what the merger ratio, etc., is, how this has been arrived at? I mean, just run us through the merger, the entire thing which has been approved right now by State Bank of India.
Yeah, so we had hired about 8 valuers for this whole process. So SBI hired one valuer, and each of these banks had a valuer each, and they jointly arrived at a valuation for their banks. And then there was an independent evaluation done of the joint valuation also. So a proper fair process was followed, and then it was approved by the boards of all the banks. And that is how we have arrived at the swap ratio. The basic point here is that 16th May, that is 17th May when we announced the merger in public domain. So 16th May was taken as the cutoff date.
For the purpose of valuation?
That's right, yeah.
When you say joint valuation, what do you mean? I mean, you essentially valued all of the entities together as one.
No.
Sorry.
Joint valuation meaning that our valuer, we appointed a valuer, and say a State Bank of Bikaner and Jaipur would have appointed a valuer. The 2 valuers would then arrive at a joint valuation.
Okay.
And then a third advisor would give a fairness opinion.
Right.
Similarly, for us and SBT, we would have each appointed a valuer, and these 2 valuers would have worked together, and a third. So in all, the whole process, it involved about 8 valuers put together.
8 valuers put together. Right.
So, ma'am, just to try and understand the rationale that went into it, several parameters that obviously would have been kept in mind. The stocks have had a huge run since the time the merger announcement was made. I mean, I'm talking about all the subsidiaries, all the associates. So what were some of the key parameters that went into the valuation exercise? Because now if you're just comparing by the current closing price at the end of day today, then the ratios seem to be fairly evened out. But I just want to understand some of the key parameters that went into the valuation process.
Yeah, so like I was mentioning, typically you take the cutoff, in many of the mergers you would see that the swap ratios are announced at the time of the merger itself. Whereas in our case, when we did decide to announce that we are going for it, that was around 17th of May. So we have taken 16th of May as the cutoff date, and a lot of parameters have gone, the usual valuation parameters that do go into the financial space. So it would be for the market price method, then the comparable companies multiples, then book value. So it was a combination of all that as per established market practice.
So what happens from here, ma'am?
So what happens from here is once the boards approve, they have now, we apply to Reserve Bank of India. They will further on, after RBI approves, it goes to the Government of India. And once the Government of India notification comes, then after that it will take us 30 days. You have to give 30 days time.
Right. Now, by when are you expecting, I mean, not the actual operational merger, but I mean, the entire process to finish off by? And you start on the integration process?
So it's a little hard to say because it has to go through RBI and to the Government of India. So once that, that notification, the Gazette notification has to come from the GOI. After that, 30 days from then, that is the record date typically.
Right. Right. Okay. So 5 subsidiaries, I mean, as part of the board meetings today, 5 subsidiaries have been approved to be merged with State Bank of India?
5 associate banks, yes.
Right. Are there any other resolutions which have been passed? I mean, of course, pertaining with the merger itself in terms of,
No,
or is just the ratio?
So.
Is just the ratio?
Just the ratio, basically, yeah.
Just the ratio.
So, ma'am, as you go through the process of seeking other additional approvals, what about the branch rationalization plan? Have some contours started being drawn up there as well?
Yes, teams are working on it, and contours are being worked out. Actually, we've broadly decided what parameters to, make as a reference point when we are deciding which branch to relocate or merge. And we will be very judicious about it. So it's not simply about locations being closed. It is also about other factors of. Say, is the branch on the first floor or is it on the ground floor? What kind of clientele is there? Can we just change the mix of the business and keep the branch there? So it is going to be a very judicious, effort. We don't want to really destroy any customer value that any branch may have built up. So we will do it judiciously. Yeah.
Sure, I get that point, but can you give us a rough sense, I mean, a rough numerical idea of how many branch closures we might be talking about once the entire merger process is underway and complete?
I don't think we should look at it as branch closures. These branches may get relocated because now Reserve Bank of India has allowed banks, particularly in urban and metro centers, to relocate. So I don't think we should look at it as closures. It may be merged. Some branches may get merged. Some branches may get relocated elsewhere.
Ma'am, what is the, since you say that teams are already working on it and this has been in the works for some time, what is the cost benefit? Because there are costs associated with the merger as well.
So, the most obvious cost which we have shared with, I think, most people is the HR cost, so that is the most obvious. But, there are huge upsides. In fact, we are looking at it as a cost-cutting initiative, in the medium term. Because synergies, rationalizations, 5 corporate offices, they go away. We'll possibly open 2 more new head offices.
If I can share some numbers, but this is independent sort of analysts who track the company. They say that the additional merger-related costs on account of wage pension parity may be about 3,000 crores.
That is what we have actually shared out.
Okay, and savings could be about 3,500 crores.
That is, broadly last quarter we had shared out. There is one big, for example, I'll give you one big number, that the 5 treasuries together of the associate banks earn on an average 90 basis points less than our treasury. So it will take some time, once these treasuries merge, and it will also they have 200 people working for these 5 treasuries. So those kind of synergies will come in. Our cost of deposits is lower. If you take the net spread, ours is higher. So, but again, this will take some time. Gradually, it will build up.
Yeah. The subsidiaries have about a 5% market share, ma'am, right now? Oh.
I, Prashant, don't remember. They have about 4 lakh crores as advances and about 5,16,000 crores as deposits.
Right. So about 70 lakh crores is the total. So yeah, I mean around 4-5%, right? The total.
Yeah, I guess so. Because we typically think of it as 22 and we are at about 17. Should be that. Yeah.
No. So I'm just trying to. So how should we look at the merger? Because immediately people will make these kind of calculations, right? But this is obviously you have your eye on the longer term. I mean, how this could actually pan out for you. I mean, in terms of bringing down costs, also increasing your bargaining power. I mean, being a stronger entity in the marketplace. I mean, so could you just talk to us about that? SBI Composites competitive position in the market. How do you expect that to change over a period of time?
Obviously we will, jump above the 50 in the top 50 banks in the world. And like you said, 22% market share in the country. See, the basic thing is, obviously the cost advantages. There are also competition advantages. Some places we were competing against each other. No matter what you think at the corporate level, but at the branch level, it's hard for a branch manager to say, okay, I will not compete with the guy next door just because he's my associate bank. It doesn't work like that. So that... And one other big thing I would say is that many of our large corporate advances, we overlap, So we have relationship management teams. We have, across these banks, each bank has to go to 5 different boards to take any approvals. So I think the process of handling advances, that will improve. The other big piece is that they have about 72,000 employees. And if you see our employees, we, State Bank of India alone has about 10 to 12,000 retirements per year.
Sure.
And as this dearth of senior and mid to senior level employees, skilled employees, starts hitting us, I think this will really fill in the gap very nicely.
We also have Mr. Ashwin Parekh joining into the conversation to sort of throw some light on the swap ratio. I'll get to Mr. Parekh in just a bit, but a question to you, ma'am. At the end of the first quarter, what we've seen is significant deterioration in asset quality of some of the listed banks. When we have the numbers with us, for instance, for State Bank of Bikaner in Jaipur, the loss was 221 crores. The gross NPA shot up to about 6.2%. For SBM, a loss of 472 crores. NPAs at about 7.8%. And it was even higher for State Bank of Travancore. The number that I have at the GNPA level is in excess of 9%. Is the cleaning out process of all the associate banks over with the end of the first quarter? What can we expect in terms of consolidated NPL picture when the amalgamation is complete?
What we are really we have been trying to do in the first quarter is more or less align our asset quality, the six of us together. There was an AQR that happened, and it was not uniform across all banks, as you know. So that is the effort that is going on. And in some cases, we've been able to, in most cases, we have been able to classify an associate banks as per our classification. Where that has not happened, at least we have increase the level of provisioning. And we hope to align the asset quality more or less fully by end of September quarter.
So that means at least another quarter of pain for the associates before we're at a bit of a, sort of an even plane with respect to asset quality of the associates. And I mean, that would match, let's say, the SBI asset quality standards, as you say.
More or less so, but I would not say even, but more or less. Whether it is 60% we've taken in first quarter and 40% to the second quarter, that we'll see.
Right.
But more or less, yes. Effort is to get it out of the way by September.
All right. Ritu Singh, I'm sure you know Ritu, our colleague. She's also with us on the phone line, and she has a few questions. Ritu, go on.
Mr. Kant, I've already asked you on this, but what the zoning looks like? Most of the projects, I'm not wrong, it's around 60-62% right now.
Okay, I think the audio is Ritu. Let's just dial Ritu back. Apologies, we've got Ritu on a pretty bad line. Let's just dial her back. Ma'am, just to go back on the question, Ritu will be with us, and she has a few questions as well. But in the meanwhile, you began by saying on that valuation issue. So most of the associate banks are valued. Subsidiaries were valued at 0.5, 0.6. I mean, to book, right? How important has been the book value as a metric in terms of?
It has been one of the key inputs. I
Right.
would not like to comment on the very detailed valuation process that has gone through, and it has been done by very, high quality, well thought of independent valuers. Like I said, a bunch of them. So I don't want to go into the details of it, but yes, book value has been one of the this thing.
Okay, ma'am, I would request you to just hold the line. Ashwin Parekh is